everyone, welcome back to my channel. See Meera Joisher here, and this time we are progressing on the very same topic as we had discussed in the last video, that is TDS from an NRI transaction. Going ahead, last time when we discussed on the TDS from purchase of a property owned by an NRI. Now what we want to discuss is TDS on the rental paid on a property owned by an NRI. Like last time when we said that the rates, the payment dates, the process to be adopted for paying this TDS, the value on which TDS is deducted, everything is different from what a resident to resident transaction would take place. Same is the case in case of an NRI rental also. As against a normal resident to resident transaction, and resident to resident, let me just clarify that. When I talk about resident, means a person who stays in India and does all his activities in India. This is a term which we use in taxation, right? And NRI is a person who resides outside India and does his transactions outside India, right? So when I talk of a resident to resident rental, my TDS is applicable at a rental value of more than 50,000 rupees. But when it comes to a non-resident to resident, the TDS is applicable on case of any amount of rental. That is, even a 1 rupee or a 5 rupee rental paid, TDS gets subtracted. In case of the rate at which this TDS is required to be deducted, in a normal resident to resident transaction, the rate applicable is 5%. As against that, in case of a non-resident to resident transaction, the rate applicable is 31.2%. There are some basic amounts, cess, etc. Let us all combine it as a package, and the final amount that is required to be withheld, deducted, is 31.2%. The NRI is not required definitely to discharge such heavy tax, but it is the responsibility of the resident tenant to deduct tax at this highest rate so that government is not at loss. The non-resident can later on make actual calculation of the taxes he or she is required to discharge, make that declaration in the income tax return, and claim back every possible refund from the government, and government is happy to repay it with interest. But as a resident tenant, don't go for shortcuts like paying this amount to the non-resident in his local account, or paying this amount to the non-resident to a resident relative like a wife, mother, brother, sister. Why? Because the government is going to hold you responsible for all short deductions. What is short deduction? Say we are saying 31.2% of TDS which is required. As against that, if you go ahead and deduct only 5% TDS, for the balance 26.2%, government will charge you with a notice, with an interest and penalty. You will not only face the trouble of answering to the department, but also might require to pay that excess amount, and you will not have a recourse going back to the NRI and claiming that amount. Possibly you might have, by the time you receive this notice, you might have vacated the property and you are not in touch of the NRI, right? How do you claim it back? So don't get into any kind of shortcuts, neither on your own nor on any instruction from the NRI or their agent. Be really smart, cool, deduct the highest taxes and let them claim it back. So 31.2%, and the NRI, we had discussed something like a lower TDS certificate in our last video, but is it same applicable now also? So I would say yes, it is applicable. They are eligible to go in for a lower TDS certificate. But in my earlier case, where it was a very huge amount, the amount at stake was almost 25 lakhs, 30, amounts were in lakhs, right? As against this, if you say my property rental is 50,000 rupees, my TDS thereupon is somewhere 15 to 17,000 rupees per month, multiplied into 12, it hardly goes into few lakhs. For that, taking the trouble of obtaining a lower TDS certificate is a lot of hassle, and hence we do not generally suggest to go ahead taking this certificate in rental cases. So if the NRI still goes ahead, procures this lower TDS and gives it to you, definitely deduct whatever is mentioned in it. Otherwise, it is 31.2%. In case of a resident to resident, this TDS deducted every month is required to be paid before the 30th of the succeeding month. But in case of a non-resident to resident, this tax amount is required to be deposited in the government account using a TDS challan before the 7th of the succeeding month. Every month you deduct these payments, you deposit in the government account, and at the end of the quarter, 30 days within the next month, a TDS return is required to be filed under Form 27A again, and you need to declare all these payments. Go ahead, issue Form 16A, and you are done with it. So the process is not that complicated also, but what happens is, firstly, the NRI does not want to declare or get higher amounts deducted, so they approach you stating to deduct lower amounts, or you are not well versed with the provisions and hence you deduct the normal 5% pay through 26QC and you feel your job is done. So don't remain uninformed. I am sure after this video, never in your life you will go ahead and do this mistake which according to you is small, but when it comes to law, it may make you end up in a very huge loss in terms of money as well as trouble of answering the government. Right? Very simple. Stay tuned, stay cool. Keep on following my videos for all such small kind of tips and information which on a day-to-day basis are helpful to you. If you feel it was helpful to you and any of your friends, relatives are also interested in it, might be into the same situation, definitely please do share these videos, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to click on the bell icon so that you get the notification of the next video immediately as I post. Coming up next in this series is more from the NRI point of view, wherein the NRI has questions on can they bring in money, can they invest in properties in India, what will be their taxability, how do they take it back. So all those aspects which I call as an inward remittance, outward remittance, something as the FEMA umbrella, we will discuss on that in very simple and lucid language. So stay tuned and keep sharing. Thanks for watching. Bye bye. Have a nice day.